Karen hired a PI to watch me. She didn't know I wrote the book on surveillance. You ever get that feeling someone's watching you, but not in a movie way? In a someone's taking pictures of your trash kind of way? I'm Miles Rourke. I live on a quiet cul-de-sac in Bensfield, Arizona. Former U.S. Air Force ISR specialist turned private investigator. I moved here for the quiet. What I got instead was a woman named Karen Dallimore, a self-appointed HOA president who never actually filed the papers to make the HOA real. But that didn't stop her from acting like she owned the whole subdivision. To be honest, I ignored her at first. I'd seen power-hungry people in camo and in khakis. Karen wore both, depending on who she was trying to scare. She ran a Facebook group called Bensfield Betterment Watch, but most of her posts were just blurry photos of neighbors' porches and long rants about weeds, flag colors, or unusual vehicles. That's where I first showed up because of my blacked-out Dodge Durango with old surveillance mods. She thought it looked military-adjacent. She wasn't wrong, but that wasn't illegal. What was illegal? Hiring a licensed private investigator to follow me, tail me, photograph me, record me, especially since I am one. When I first spotted the guy in the green Chevy Caprice with mismatched plates, I knew. The brake light twitch, the fake Starbucks cup hiding a lens, the way he followed from 2 cars back, I almost smiled. He wasn't terrible, but he wasn't good. Not good enough to follow a man who taught human surveillance to contractors in Kandahar. So I played along. I gave him patterns, morning drives with no destination, stops at diners I never ate in, long conversations with my old landlord just to throw him loops. And when I was ready, I followed him, back to a bland law office. A check written out by Karen D. I laughed. She paid someone to try and dig dirt on me, not knowing I already had a file on her. You see, Karen had been surveilling this neighborhood long before she found me. She installed fake HOA cameras that fed nowhere, threatened fines that didn't legally exist, and had harassed 3 families into moving 2 of them. Black, 1 Vietnamese. She claimed it was property standard enforcement. I called it what it was, intimidation. So I did what I do best, I investigated. I uncovered everything, the fake HOA charter, never notarized, the bank account in her name collecting dues, the company she hired Brent Hill and Bay PI services run by her cousin, and the dozen complaints filed to county officials, all of which she intercepted via a buddy in code enforcement. The man tailing me, his name was Peter Callow, former sheriff's deputy, bad pension, bad ethics. When I confronted him with a quiet offer at a gas station, just the 2 of us, and a folder of photos, I gave him a choice, be on the right side, or go down with her. He chose right, and that's when it all turned. You never really know what someone's hiding until you shine the right kind of light. After Peter agreed to talk, I met him in a neutral place, a half-abandoned diner out on Route 46. He showed up late, looking like a man trying to decide whether to be ashamed or defiant. I bought him coffee and slid a flash drive across the table. "Go ahead," I said. "Plug it in." He hesitated, then pulled his laptop from a worn leather bag. I watched his eyebrows twitch as the files opened photos of him following me. Timestamps, receipts from the gas station, a GPS trace I lifted from a signal jammer he didn't realize I'd planted under his bumper. "You were good," I said. "Just not good enough." Peter let out a slow breath. "She said you were dangerous." "She's right," I replied, smiling. "Just not in the way she thinks." He dropped the tough guy act. Turns out, Karen didn't just hire him, she lied to him. Told him I had military weapons stockpiled, was harassing neighbors, possibly squatting in my own home. She gave him fabricated complaints. That flipped something in him. "I don't do dirty work," he said. Didn't know she was running some kind of shadow HOA. Oh, she was, and now I had a witness. With Peter on my side, I started digging deeper. I built a digital folder called The Fake Ho Files, inside audio recordings of Karen threatening neighbors, drone shots of her property showing illegal surveillance gear pointed outward, screenshots of her deleting comments from residents pushing back in her Facebook group, Evidence of checks she cashed under HOA fees despite zero legal registration. The deeper I went, the uglier it got. Karen didn't just want order, she wanted power, she wanted fear, and she was using the illusion of authority to create both. But here's the twist: she picked the wrong person to try and manipulate. I've interrogated cartel runners, tracked cyber warfare cells, debriefed triple agents. Karen Wellington. She was a walking contradiction wrapped in a cardigan. She didn't understand the stakes, so I raised them. I started contacting former victims, quietly. Privately, a Vietnamese couple who left after she put a lien on their house over unauthorized herbs, a single mom who Karen publicly shamed for her messy porch just because she left out a stroller. They remembered, and they were angry. Soon I had a small coalition. We started compiling sworn statements. Several people didn't even realize they never joined an HOA. They just assumed one existed. Karen had tricked the title companies into slipping in junk paperwork. Her cousin was a real estate agent. It was all tangled, but unraveling fast. Peter gave me a copy of the contract. She made him sign a fake NDA with HOA letterhead. It was laughable, illegal, and that was the key. With evidence in hand, I prepped a case. But not for court, not yet. First, I wanted to hit her where it hurt her image. I printed flyers, posted clips, used burner accounts to leak the truth into her Facebook group. She banned over a dozen people in a day, but the damage was done. One neighbor filmed her yelling on their porch and uploaded it to TikTok. It hit 200,000 views in 48 hours. That's when the press showed up. Channel 3 rolled down our cul-de-sac in a white van. I stood in my yard, trimming hedges. They asked if I was the veteran Karen accused of spying on her neighborhood. I nodded and said, no comment until tonight. I invited every neighbor I trusted to a barbecue. Nothing fancy, just burgers, iced tea, and the biggest 70-inch TV I could find. When the sun dipped, I played a short video I made using Peter's footage, my drone shots, and audio from Karen's own mouth. We called it the HOA that never was. People gasped, some cried. One woman asked if we could sue. I just smiled, because that was already in motion. Karen didn't show that night, but her porch camera lit up every few minutes. She was watching everything she once controlled fall apart. And I hadn't even gone public yet. There's a moment, right before a house of cards falls, where everything goes dead quiet. You can almost feel it, like the structure itself knows what's coming. That moment hit our neighborhood the Monday after the barbecue. Karen's porch lights were still on at 4 a.m. That's when she usually went outside in a robe, whispering into her phone and waving at the cameras she installed in her window, flower boxes, because yes, she hid lenses in her marigolds. But this morning was different. Because I'd filed 3 things the Friday before: a fraud complaint with the Arizona Attorney General, a cease and desist on behalf of 5 neighbors, and an ethics violation with the PI board, naming her cousin's firm. But the real match that came from someone else, Jenna Moreno, single mom, former tenant in Lot 14. She quietly filed a class action, and her new attorney wanted to talk. Guess who he called first? He was sharp, mid-40s, used to teach legal ethics at Arizona State. We met at a diner, same booth where I'd flipped Peter. The lawyer's name was Howard Lynn, and he didn't waste time. She's done, he said, sliding a manila folder my way. But if we're smart, we don't just burn her, we rebuild the whole street. We change precedent. He wasn't kidding. Turns out Karen's fake HOA activities weren't isolated. In his words, Bensfield is a test site. Her cousin, the so-called investigator, was working with a network of realtors who exploited low-info buyers by slipping in phantom HOA clauses, then using fake boards to enforce fines, liens, and surveillance. They'd collected nearly $190 or $1,000 across 4 neighborhoods. And Bensfield. We were the pilot. I took all this in like intel before a mission. Calculated, calm, but deep down, I was seething. Not just for me, but for Jenna, and for the old Filipino couple Karen made cry during a community walk. For the father of 3 who mowed his lawn in the dark because she threatened him over noise hours. This wasn't suburban drama. It was warfare legal, psychological warfare. So we hit back. The plan was simple: drop an anonymous leak to Channel 3's investigative unit. Hold a community truth night on the cul-de-sac. Expose the fake HOA accounts through forensic accounting. Deliver a formal civil suit in front of Karen's cameras with press in tow. And we had receipts. We had witnesses. We had video. Karen had nothing. The day of the collapse felt like a town festival, and a trial rolled into one. Lawn chairs lined the sidewalk. Kids rode bikes past folding tables covered in printouts. My old neighbor, Joel, former Navy, brought his retired K9 who used to sniff for hidden tech. He found 2 bugs in Karen's planter boxes. When Channel 3 arrived, I didn't say a word. I handed them the flash drive. The reporter pressed play. A drone clip of Karen shouting, "I am the HOA," echoed across portable speakers. Then audio of her saying, "If they don't pay, we'll find ways to make them leave." Gasps, murmurs. Then the voice of Peter confessing everything. Karen didn't come outside, but someone else did: the county sheriff. You see, part of our lawsuit involved wire fraud, unauthorized banking, tampering with real estate disclosures, and impersonating an official body. So yes, the sheriff came with deputies. They knocked. No answer. They knocked again. Then her door opened. Just a crack. And she tried to say something about misunderstandings. But the moment she saw the warrant folder in the sheriff's hand, her voice stopped. Dead quiet, just like the moment before a collapse. I didn't cheer. I didn't smile. Because justice isn't about vengeance. It's about ending the cycle. Karen was taken in calmly, no cuffs yet, but her laptop, phone, and every HOA fine ledger were bagged and tagged. The whole neighborhood watched. The woman who once patrolled our sidewalks with a clipboard and a glare was now sitting in the back of a cruiser. No power, no audience, just a view of everything she tried to control, slipping away. And in that silence, I saw something I didn't expect. Relief. People exhaled, some hugged. One man openly wept. It wasn't just Karen they feared, it was the idea of being powerless. But now, the tide had turned, and it wasn't done rising. It took 48 hours. 48 hours from the moment Karen was escorted into that sheriff's cruiser to the moment her face appeared on every news channel in the region. Her mugshot wasn't dramatic, just pale, puffy, dazed, but the headline beneath it lit a fuse. Woman posed as HOA president for years, investigation unfolds in 4 counties. By Tuesday, whenever fake HOA queen was trending on Twitter. Wednesday morning, I woke up to an email from a Today Show producer. Thursday night, a YouTube legal analyst broke down our case in a 30-minute video that pulled in over 500,000 views before sunrise. I wasn't the story. I was the spark, but the neighborhood that was the fire. The court hearings hadn't even begun, but the backlash had. And not just in Bensfield. People from other neighborhoods, those other test sites Karen's cousin targeted, started reaching out. The same patterns, the same forged papers, the same pretend rules enforced by fear and confusion. Only now, they had something they didn't have before: evidence it was all a lie. A retired Army colonel from Mesa sent me a handwritten letter that said, "I thought I was alone. Turns out, I was just early." But even as the victims rose, the defenders came too. Some neighbors, yes, even after all they'd seen, still sided with Karen. Said she brought order, kept things clean, and that rules are rules, whether they're written or not. That made me realize something chilling: the system Karen built had indoctrinated people. She didn't just install fear, she installed loyalty. That's why the next part had to be public, transparent, humbling, and sharp. I gave Channel 3 the full archive. No edits, no commentary, just data. And they ran with it. A 5-part special series aired the following week: The Woman Who Wasn't President, the private investigator she sent, and the one she didn't know about. The money trail: how $190K disappeared. Fear as policy inside a fake HOA's rulebook. What happens when the neighborhood fights back? I watched each episode sitting in my garage with neighbors packed like a theater crowd. Even Peter came by. He stood in the back, head low, sipping Gatorade like it was whiskey. Jenna sat beside me. I didn't think she could be stopped. She said, voice shaky, she wasn't. I replied, we were. Then came the subpoenas. The courts moved faster than I expected. Karen was charged with fraud, misrepresentation, falsification of documents, and impersonating a government body. Her cousin, the investigator, lost his license permanently. Two of the title companies involved were fined by the state. But the wildest part, Karen had the audacity to try and countersue us for defamation. Her lawyer lasted 3 days before quitting, and her trial that became a public circus. I was called to testify, not as a victim, as an expert. I walked into that courtroom in a dark gray suit, carrying a worn leather satchel that had followed me through 6 tours and 4 continents. Inside were 2 things: the original, unsigned HOA registration form she never filed, a printed quote from her private Facebook chat, time-stamped, where she wrote, "They don't have to know it's fake. As long as they act like it's real, it works." When I read that aloud, the room went silent. Karen wouldn't meet my eyes. But the judge, she stared right through her. She was found liable on 7 counts. The restitution included all collected dues, penalties, and surveillance equipment costs. She lost her home to cover legal fees. But worse than the money was the ban. She was legally barred from participating in any residential or HOA leadership role again, anywhere in the state of Arizona. And still, she tried to smile for the cameras. It didn't land. But this isn't a story about Karen. It's about what happened after her collapse. Because something strange happened when the Queen fell. The people who used to whisper started speaking louder. They knocked on each other's doors. They painted over the fake warning signs Karen installed. They started planting gardens in non-approved colors. They started laughing again. They started living. I'd walk the block at night and see kids on bikes where silence used to rule. Porch lights stayed on. Flags came back up, every shape, every color. There were differences, sure, but for the first time, there was truth. And I knew then, my job here was done. But one last thing still lingered. 3 weeks after the trial, I got a plain white envelope in my mailbox. No return address. Inside, a photo of Karen sitting on a bench, alone. A note, handwritten in shaky script. You never had to make it personal. You just had to make it public. I kept that photo, not as a trophy, as a reminder. Power can be fake, but consequences, those are always real. A neighborhood doesn't heal overnight. It creaks. It stumbles. Sometimes it breaks again before it bends in the right direction. But we tried. After the trial, Bensfield didn't just move on, we transformed. And I'm not using that word lightly. The signs came down first, then the cameras, then the fear. Karen's old rules were scrubbed off the mail kiosks and fencing. Joel, the retired Navy guy, offered to pressure wash the sidewalk where Karen once painted, "No trucks allowed," in her own handwriting. People gathered to watch the paint vanish like a spell lifted from the street. I kept thinking, this is what freedom smells like: chlorine, barbecue smoke, and asphalt warming under May sun. But freedom has its price. Without the fake HOA, the neighborhood lacked structure. Trash days got missed. Someone parked a rusted trailer outside Lot 8 for 2 weeks. A few folks muttered about Karen not being entirely wrong. That was our first fracture. So we did something radical. We met, not in secret, not online, but in person. On my lawn, no titles, no board, just people with folding chairs, lemonade, and too many chips. Jenna brought her laptop. Peter, surprisingly, offered to help coordinate a neighborhood watch without cameras. Joel brought hand-drawn maps showing utility lines no one had updated since 1996. That night, we voted, not on fines, on trust. We drafted a community pact: no surveillance without consent, no false authority, no decisions made in private that affect public lives. We didn't call it an HOA. We called it a civic circle, a name that couldn't be corrupted by power-hungry paper and clipboards. 6 weeks later, the street looked different. Children's chalk drawings lined the sidewalks. Someone set up a little library box at the cul-de-sac, the Vietnamese couple that left. They moved back in, said they felt safer now. I gave them my number and told them it wasn't a gesture, it was a promise. Even the air felt different, like it had been held too long, and we were finally breathing again. But life has a strange way of twisting the ending. And mine came in the form of a woman in sunglasses, standing across the street from my house one morning. She didn't wave. She didn't move, just watched. I walked over. "You lost?" I asked casually. She pulled off her shades. Blonde hair, heavy makeup, red lips. "Karen. Out on bail, awaiting final sentencing. Nice to see I left things better than I found them," she said with a smile like poison. I didn't flinch. "I think you left exactly the mess you always intended to create." She took a deep breath. "You're not as righteous as you think. Miles, you enjoyed it. I enjoyed the truth." I said, calm, "But I never needed you to fall." "You did that on your own?" She stared at the house she lost, the one now home to a retired couple with wind chimes on the porch and a tomato garden in back. "You'll see," she whispered. "People like rules. Sooner or later, they'll want someone to tell them what to do again." She turned, walked away. I haven't seen her since, but I won't lie, her words stuck with me, because she wasn't wrong about everything. It's been 7 months now. We have our hiccups, someone plays drums at night, and the new neighbor in Lot 11 built a chicken coop that smells like wet hay, but we work through it. Together, not because we're perfect, but because we remember. We remember what it felt like to live under someone who weaponized order, who manipulated silence, who made community a tool for control instead of care. And that memory, it protects us. Even when we forget to say hi, even when the trash pickup runs late, even when someone plants flamingos on their lawn and starts a 47 comment thread about lawn decor rights, we're still free. And that freedom didn't come from winning a lawsuit. It came from looking at each other eye to eye and saying, never again. Can a community truly thrive without official rules, or do rules become dangerous when misused? Have you ever seen power used for control in the name of order? Let us know where you draw the line between protection and oppression.